Yes.
Mr. Benicki?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Ms. Hahn?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Violi?
Yes.
Mr. Hixenbaugh?
Yes.
Proposed resolution passes 9-0.
Thank you. Ordinances on second reading.
Proposed ordinance number 2024-04, an ordinance amending Chapter 137 of the Municipal Code of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, as from time to time amended, commonly known as the zoning ordinance of 1966 of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana. This is PUD amendment for reduced building and parking setbacks for interior lot lines, Lot 1 and 2 of the enclave at Grandview Minor Subdivision.
Thank you. May we have the committee report, please?
Yes, Mr. President. To the members of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, your Committee on Land Use Planning, to whom is referred the matter proposed ordinance 2024-04, report that they have examined said matter and in their opinion should be adopted. This is signed by the committee members present, and I move for its acceptance.
Second.
Thank you. A motion has been made and seconded to approve the committee report. Any additional questions or comments from the council? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And you pin it in the chair. The ayes have it. And with that, we will move into second reading and public hearing on proposed ordinance 2024-04. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, if you would, please come forward.
Yeah. Good evening, Mr. President, members of the full council. My name is Rich Deal. I'm general counsel at Great Lakes Capital, who's proposing to continue with the Grandview Phase 3 development on the northwest corner of Gumwood or Main Street and State Road 23 or Cleveland Road here in Mishawaka. Pleased to join Daryl Knipp this evening from Avonmarsh and his team who've helped on the civil and other aspects of this overall development. But the request before you this evening is for an amendment to the PUD, which will accommodate a joint building project that involves multifamily connected with a hotel. And basically, this is, I think the full council has been aware of and supportive of the project in the past of other aspects. But what we're proposing to do is take the large Block 200 area, which is our TIF area, and subdivide the lot into two lots, one on which the hotel will be developed and one on which the multifamily will be developed. And the buildings will be connected, and therefore we're requesting approval for a variance to the PUD that allows a zero line setback for the buildings to be connected. So greatly appreciate your consideration and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Did you say the hotel and the residential will be connected?
Yeah, so this is a kind of a mixed-use project involving 246 kind of apartment units that are wrapped around a parking garage, and connected to the building is the 125-room hotel. So the buildings will share a common wall, and we're going to have the lot line directly kind of where that common wall is.
Okay, that answered my question. The wall, I was wondering if there was like a pass-through or anything.
Yeah, there's very, very limited pass-throughs, more for fire-related items between the two. But the idea is this will provide some flexibility on ability to finance the hotel development with certain financing and the multifamily with other financing.
Thank you.
Yep, appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor? If you would, please come forward. Then is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor? Is there anyone present this evening who wishes to speak in opposition? Please come forward. And is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in opposition? Are there any council members who wish to speak? If not, then I call for the question.
Question.
Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council?
Mrs. Hazen?
Yes.
Mrs. Volker?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Benicki?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Ms. Hahn?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Violi?
Yes.
Mr. Hixenbaugh?
Yes.
Proposed ordinance passes 9-0. Proposed ordinance number 2024-05, an ordinance annexing contiguous territory to the city of Mishawaka, Indiana, and providing zoning classification therefore. This is to annex 1.5 acres crosshatch and establishing zoning as S2 PUD and amend existing Douglas Common PUD to allow for storage units, 16963 Douglas Road and adjacent property. Public hearing with no vote.
Thank you. At this time, pursuant to Indiana law, we will open the public hearing on proposed ordinance 2024-05. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, if you would, please come forward.
I just wanted, John Pericini, 633 Windy Cove Court, Mishawaka. I was just checking. I'm a property owner. Mr. Rupley's property is with this, but I don't represent Mr. Rupley. I was just making sure his broker might have showed up. So, but I wanted to clarify that. We've had a favorable recommendation from the Plan Commission and the staff, which we appreciate. We had kind of a lengthy meeting that had some remonstration with some neighbors to the northwest and to the east. You may hear some legal terms thrown out through this, spot zoning, industrial zoning. I think the council attorney and the city attorney can verify that there's no legal problem here whatsoever. This is not a residential neighborhood, never has been. This has been zoned commercial, multifamily, and office for, well, when I got it 30 years ago, so it's always been that way. And to the east in the front, there's the warehouses in the back, and then there's 7-Eleven and the commercial in the front, just to give you an idea. We have, in a meeting afterwards, I did stay and met with a lot of neighbors from the Cherokee Drive area to the northwest to try to answer some questions, probably just mostly agree to disagree. We got a typical, the city's growth is pushing up against county. It's kind of, this happens all the time, as you probably know. So we just try to, appease them with, the city has requirements with buffers and things like that. Ray Powell is from U-Haul here. He'll be doing a presentation. We're going to have there was a little bit of an issue. He couldn't make it because of a corporate meeting at the Plan Commission, so we're going to have a little more details for you on, the phases of this thing and how it folds into the land, which will be helpful. I can't speak for U-Haul. I'm speaking out of school there a little bit. So, but I did, then we had, Mr. Benicki had gotten, since it's his district, had asked that one of the neighbors had reached out to him in North Douglas Condo, so I called him and met with him. And then I asked him if he'd want to meet with Ray and myself, and we did. We met with about 5 or 6 neighbors. It's a little different there. There's about 30 people there. Actually, 1/3 of the people live there, and then 1/3 rent it, and then 1/3 do Notre Dame Airbnb type of thing. So we had a handful of people there. Some of them were the ones that just come in and out of town. So trying to explain the buffering and how this lays out and where this thing's going to be. I wanted to give you a couple handouts on the site so you can kind of get an idea. The long, narrow site is it, and then these resident appointments.
And while you're gathering those documents, Mr. Pericini, and this will be a request of everyone who's going to speak this evening, I believe that we're having a little trouble with the sound system. So for all of you who are going to speak, if you can step as close to the microphone as possible and maybe try to, without yelling at us, try to project as much as possible, we would appreciate it. So thank you.
You can't have trouble hearing me, can you?
Believe it or not, a little bit, but that's
Wow,
much better
okay.
now.
That's pretty surprising. Anyway, everybody got a copy of that? Yeah.
It's still being distributed.
Okay. One of the points, the long, narrow piece there that's vacant is the property, and then to the east, the couple squares there, but it seems like the narrow piece seems to be the most concerned. If you see the neighborhood where it says Cherokee, there was a point brought up that all this would be torn down. I don't own the land to the north or south of Cherokee, those 2 wooded areas. That's nothing, has nothing to do with this project. I think Ray will show where this lays into the land, because most of that in the back is not going to be touched, but I'll let him speak about that. And then you can see the North Douglas condos development to the east there. I got one more handout for you. There is a large easement, an I&M easement, running on that property, not mine, but to the east. That's, you can see it's kind of cleared because they did that last year. And I have copies. If you take 2 sheets of this, this shows you, the orange is my property line, this 60-foot easement, plus whatever the city's going to require is going to give a pretty big buffer back there if they ever go to that backside. So I wanted to give you that. 2 sheets because it's a long, narrow survey. It kind of takes a little surveyor couldn't get them all. The project, you know, we're talking about, if we look at the business side of things, I know that's not what the neighbors want to hear, but, you know, we're paying about $2,000 a year in property tax because of the vacant land. U-Haul is going to do probably $6 million initially, which Ray will verify, and everything's going to be initially right up front on Douglas Road. I did get some response from the neighbors at North Douglas. You know, they said, well, one of them said, we don't want apartments, and we don't want industrial, and there's just not a lot of, you know, this has been for sale for about 30 years. I've had it. Office space, there's about 2.5 million square feet of vacant office space in downtown South Bend. You know, medical, you're not going to get a 12-acre medical facility there with the hospital to the east and all the Beacons growth going, you know, on Capitol Avenue. So this seemed to be really kind of a natural fit for the site on Douglas when the road widened in proximity with Notre Dame and the Grape Road, Mishawaka, Main Street area. So we just haven't had that kind of demand for anything other than that. I don't see that being a big retail frontage. You know, it's long and narrow, and so this is where, you know, we went after all these years. And I can say that U-Haul has been, just for a large company, they are privately owned. They're not, you know, they're definitely privately owned. They've been great to work with. And I did tell the neighbors, we will agree to disagree, but I can guarantee you they will have a representative to respond to if they have an issue. Ray is in this region. There'll be somebody in an office on Grape Road, and they will be here. There's not like all of a sudden you got to start calling Arizona to get a hold of somebody. That's not going to happen. So, if no questions, I'll hand it over to Ray to do his presentation.
Thank you. Are there any
And then
questions?
Matt, we can just kind of, just to give you an idea on the buffering.
Are there any questions for Mr. Piercini? Mrs. Volker?
Thank you. Just for clarification, so the property that needs to be rezoned is the small square right here, and the property line is to the east, is to the east of the easement. Is that correct?
Yeah, mine is to the west. The orange is my property line, and to the east of that is the easement that's actually the I&M easement that actually is running on the adjacent property.
Okay.
Now, just to clarify, this is part of
This
it.
is south.
too. These 2 parcels here, but they don't seem to be in question. I own this little square.
Right.
I have a partner in this. I own this square here. This is Mr. Root, who's on Douglas Road. That's right.
Yes,
Which the easement runs through those parcels.
west.
Any other questions, Mrs. Volker?
No, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate
Are
it.
there other questions for Mr. Piercini? One more, Mr. Piercini, before
Oh, yes.
we turn it over to the next speaker. With regard to the self-storage facilities that are located to the east of the condominium development.
Right.
And if you mentioned this, I'll apologize for not picking up on it. How long have those facilities been in place?
We built those probably about 91, I think, somewhere around there. And then they were there for, I don't know how many years, and then the condos built after that.
So the condos were constructed after the
Yes.
self-log storage
Yeah,
facilities
we
were in
sold the
place?
land to them at the time, back in like 90, 91 or some 92. Right.
That was my question. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor, please come forward. And begin by stating your name and address for the record, if you would, please.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Ray Powell. I live at 17324 Brookwood Drive in Lowell, Indiana. I'm here representing U-Haul Company. I also had a presentation that was emailed. Unfortunately, I apologize. We just got this in. I don't actually have physical copies for you guys, so I will try to explain everything that's on the screen for you, so that way, if there's any questions, we can obviously go back to any of the slides that are on the screen. But we can go on forward to the, real quick, just to kind of touch base, John also brought it up. We are a family-owned company. We've been in existence for coming on 80 years, and the entire time we've been family-owned and will continue to be so. We are looking to expand into the community because we are need-based, and obviously our customers are letting us know where the demand is, which is in Mishawaka, so that's why we're here tonight. And go ahead and move forward, please. All right, so we're here tonight to talk about the properties at 16963 Douglas and the annexation there on the southeast corner. We are looking at building a 31,588 square foot building on the very southwest corner of the property, as shown there in the site plan. And then there is a sister building that is going to be 16,800 square feet that is in the southwest portion of the property, as you can see, that are all the way up there on Douglas Road, in the portion that we're looking to annex in. There is some secondary phases that are to the back, but as you can see, pretty much all of the property that's going to be utilized in the primary build is going to be up there right on Douglas Road. Total investment on this site is, I believe, somewhere between $17 and $18 million then, between property and the building itself. It's going to consist of a total of 3 floors on the southwest side for a total of 95,000 square feet, which is shown on the site plan there. If you'd like to go to the next slide. I do know there was some questions prior about what our uses were and what we were going to be doing with the property itself. So what we did is we zoomed out so you can kind of see what our intentions are. Right now, obviously, our intentions are the 2 primary buildings that are in the southwest and southeast corner that are right up next to Douglas. There is a secondary phase that we are looking at, but right now we don't have anything on the books for that just yet. And the rest of the property will be remaining intact as we see it currently. Go ahead and go forward, please. So this was the most current site plan or conceptuals that we have for the aesthetics on the buildings for Douglas Road there. So those would be the 2 buildings that we're describing. The southeast corner is the one that you see there in the far left side or right side of the picture, and then obviously the southwest would be the 3-story there on the left side. We do have some different conceptuals, but right now that is the most current one that we have. You can go ahead and go forward, please. And you can kind of go through a couple more screens. They're just basically some conceptuals that we've done similar in other places, just to kind of show you the fact that we are more than willing to work with anything that the city has or in requests for any kind of architectural guidelines or anything like that. We've used different looks, different aesthetics on the buildings to make them obviously fit whatever it is that the city of Mishawaka would like to work with us on. You can go ahead and go through a couple more. Just, again, they're just more visuals. This was one in Colorado that we did. I can keep going. Another one. This one, actually, I was involved in. We just got approved in Hammond, Indiana. So this is actually a current build that we're in the process of doing right now to give you an idea of what it looks like. Again, just to kind of describe what it is that we're looking at. It's a self-contained indoor climate control facility. It's top of the line. We make sure that all customers have access to what we call our interior load unload. So everything will be done interior the facility. We have access to the facility on the one side as well if anybody needs to drive up. But again, that is the current situation that we have in Hammond. If you want to go forward to, we got another one here in Joliet that we're currently in the process of getting approved. And again, like I said, we got different architectural designs based on what the city is going to recommend. And then if you want to keep going. So another thing that has been brought up a couple of times as far as security features that we offer at the facility. So a couple of things, we have 24-hour monitoring. So we have a off-site facility that will be monitoring the facility 24 hours a day. We also will have a full staff on site that will be there from 7 to 7 Monday through Thursday, 7 till 8 on Friday, and 7 to 7 Saturday, and 9 to 5 on Sunday. They monitor, obviously, everything internally when it's on site, and in 24 hours, they will monitor all motion sensors, all cameras, anything like that to make sure that the facility is secure. We also do have intercoms, all kinds of stations throughout the storage facility in case anybody has any concerns while they're inside. They can access any kind of help while they're inside. Again, we have 24-hour digital video surveillance. Individually alarmed rooms can be set up as well with keypad access. Programmable and automatic gates, depending on the configuration, if we have exterior stuff, or again, the unload for the interior stuff would be accessed by the codes as well. And again, we provide pretty much all units to be secured 24 hours a day. Go ahead and move on to the next one, please. And again, just some of the need-based programs that we offer. Again, there's sustainability programs that we like to make sure that the city knows that we're trying to bring to the local area as far as, you know, truck share, as far as box exchange programs, reuse areas for people to reuse certain products that are brought. We also have some other things like biodegradable supplies and things that people can use for their needs. Next, please. Again, just some traffic studies to kind of give you some ideas of what kind of impact our use has. Again, I know some of the residents had brought up the difference between having some retail environment versus U-Haul there. And what we found is that our actual traffic impact is far less on the neighborhood than any type of retail. And we kind of give you some typical trips and some use and traffic volume and comparisons there. And that kind of concludes my program. So I'm open for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the council? Mr. Mammolenti.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for your presentation. On maybe 3 slides ago, I saw a line item that showed like a car share. Will there be vehicles and large box trucks parked on site?
We would set up a truck share program there for whatever customers needed to use it for the area, yes.
So just to clarify, there may be multiple vehicles on site that people can rent?
We do offer vehicles for them to share to use for moving in and out of the storage facility, yes.
So will they be parked on site?
Sometimes, depends. I mean, the amount of equipment or truck shares that we have there is going to be based on the customer needs. So to understand exactly what would be parked there is going to vary based on what the local area needs.
If you were to anticipate or guess how many may be on site, what number would you throw out there?
It would be almost impossible to tell until
Do
we
you have a
actually.
minimum or a maximum?
We tend not to have a minimum or maximum because, again, we try to really find out exactly what the customers are looking for. But it can vary from 2 to 3 or up or 4. I mean, really, it's more about what's required in the local area.
Thank you.
Other questions? Mrs. Volker.
Thank you, Mr. President. So just to clarify, when you use the term truck share, does that mean I go and rent a truck from U-Haul and I can pick things up or do whatever I want with it and then return the truck? Or is this truck share specifically related to people that are using the storage facility?
It would be to both.
Okay, so I would be able to come and rent a trailer, rent a truck, rent a box truck, just like normal U-Haul activities, and then also have the large storage facility.
Correct.
Okay, and then just to follow-up question, if you don't mind, I just want to clarify, there are 2 buildings on site. The large building, the 31,000 plus square foot is the storage facility?
Correct. They're both
And then
storage
the
facilities.
And then the 16,000 square foot, is that your retail facility where I can go come
No,
and
it
buy
would be a
boxes?
secondary storage facility that we offer long-term storage at.
Okay.
We have a program called the U-Box where people can actually store their belongings in a U-Box, and we would store them inside that building for them.
Okay. And then will you also have a retail store there?
The retail store would actually be in the 31,000 square foot,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. That's all the questions I have for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Violi.
Thank you, Mr. President. Of all the pictures that you showed us of the conception, what they're going to look, which one would resemble, or, I mean, can you give us an idea which one of those would more resemble
So,
what you want to
yeah,
put
if
in
we go
Mishawaka?
back to the one that was right after the actual site plans, I believe it was like slide 4 or 5, maybe. So right there, I'm sorry, go back. Yeah, that one. So right now, that is our most current conceptual for the site. Obviously, the aesthetics are not finished and the signage is not finished. We would want to talk to the city of Mishawaka before we have anything concrete that we put on there for now. But that would be what the general construction of the buildings would look like.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Volker.
Just real quick, what are the red boxes? What are the red things? Are those garage doors that I'm pulling
No,
out?
they're actually fake doors that just kind of mimic what what they would find inside once they're inside.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Mr. Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just for future use with this land, it doesn't look like you have plans to use all the land right now. Is there any part of this you're planning on some point U-Haul would try and sell, or is there any part of the project that is not a long-term buy and hold for U-Haul?
No, we, as far as I know, I've been with U-Haul for almost 17 years. We don't typically sell property. So we look to invest into the area, and we obviously make sure that we want to find something that fits our needs. We're not looking to change or sell or do anything like that.
Are there any long-term plans for the part of the property to the north right now?
Not right now, no. And, you know, I mean, honestly, right now, really the primary focus is just the two main buildings on Douglas. Typically, that's all that we're really looking at right now. I mean, long-term, if something changes, I mean, if there's some kind of expansion area, that's one of the reasons why we added the Phase 2, which would still be pretty much right up there close to the two main buildings that you can see on the visuals here. But as far as the very northern part, right now, we have no plans for any.
And you'll just leave that right now as is with the forest in place?
Correct, yeah, I mean, we wouldn't even touch it.
And then, once the facility's up and running, do people have access to it 24 hours, or are there quiet hours in areas
No,
that are
we
close to
actually restrict access to 5 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Okay.
So, and then even outside of the store hours, when there's people on site, anybody that would have access to it would actually have to use their own security code to gain access to the facility even after closing hours.
Okay. And then I didn't quite see anything on the plans, but as far as areas where you would be doing construction that are close to residential areas, do you have screening plans for line of sight for those folks?
I'm sure we can take a look at whatever is required. I wouldn't know that at this point until we actually start getting some kind of constructural guidelines in place, but I'm sure we can take a look.
Sir, I'm going to ask you to hold off until we finish with one presentation, and then you can come to the podium. Thank you.
And then, sorry, last one, I promise here. Other U-Haul affiliates in the area, what happens with them? I know there are a couple
Yeah,
around.
so currently we have some privately owned businesses that offer U-Haul as a service. One of the reasons why we're actually trying to look at this property here is we realized that they were starting to get overwhelmed, and there was actually a need for our services here that they weren't able to provide. Obviously, we wanted to try to alleviate what was kind of going on in some of those privately run businesses and actually create a more manageable environment so that we can kind of take care of what Mishawaka is looking to have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. Other questions? Mr. Mamalati.
Thank you again. Another follow-up question regarding the vehicles. I know you can't answer that, but when you develop these two buildings, will only a portion of the entire parcel be paved?
So if you go back to the slide that's just prior. So right now, yeah, that one right there, thank you. Right now, what you're seeing where the white part is would be what would be paved. And we may not even go beyond where the If you actually draw a line right across where that second phase is for the exterior storage there, we probably wouldn't even build on or even pave that at this point in time because there's not any plans to actually get started on that phase right now.
Okay.
So it'd probably just be a straight line across where that L shape is there.
The reason I asked that question, and you said that you're helping out some overwhelmed privately owned businesses, my fear is that you're going to use this as kind of a storage facility in terms of trucks, that you may have 20, 30 vehicles lined up as a lot that folks can come and rent those vehicles.
Sure. Well, we actually, if you go one slide further, I believe that it shows an expanded view. If you look there in the center, we actually show 3 to 4 lanes is the only space that we have designated for any kind of equipment utilization. So typically, when we try to look at a site plan, we try to already identify kind of what we're doing as far as equipment goes, or the maximum right now that we're looking at. And as you can see, it's a very small portion, just kind of in the center, in between the two buildings there. Again, I really can't give you an idea of exactly how many, but what we're trying to do is trying to make it more of a manageable situation, so it's not going to be a problem as it has been at a couple of the other ancillary sites where they've gotten overwhelmed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Mr. Evans?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just for clarification, when the presentation was made to the Plan Commission, it showed that you had the outside storage facilities showed, and now it looks like it's be determined it's not going to be part of the actual building process. Correct?
Correct, yeah. I mean, the site plan that was used in that first meeting, unfortunately, was still an early site plan version. As we go through the process and kind of refine exactly what the business plan is, we kind of start to decide what's actually essential at the time. And what we decided, based on the abutting storage property that's already there that we've already purchased, that the exterior storage is probably not necessary for the time being, because now we are next door in that abutting property with the drive-up self-storage.
The only reason I'm asking that question is because when it was presented, it stated that those would be in the project.
Correct, originally, yes.
Clarification that,
Yeah, so right now, that would be a project to be determined later.
right.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Sir, thank you for your presentation. I want to make sure that I understand the business model, if you will. Will this facility, if it's approved and constructed, be franchised out to another operator, or will this be a corporate facility operated by U-Haul?
No, this would be a facility owned and operated by U-Haul and managed by us internally.
And then with regard to the sizable investment that you referenced earlier and the detail that you provided us, and thank you for that, with regard to the security, can you talk about what the price point, I'm curious, what the price point is going to be for the storage component of what's available here compared to other storage facilities that are in the community, if you have a frame of reference to be able to speak to that?
As far as to the customer?
To the customer, yes.
So typically, we actually find ourselves to the higher end of the self-storage industry. We actually try to cater to the self-storage customer that's looking for more security, a higher-end product, something that's going to obviously protect and keep their belongings secure. We actually deal with a lot of medical facilities and pharmaceutical reps and that kind of thing. And it's one of the reasons that we kind of got attracted to the area. Obviously, there's a lot of medical facilities over there as well. But we do try to offer a high-end product, which typically then translates into a little bit higher end of a price product because of what we do offer the customer.
If I understood you correctly earlier, you referenced the fact that you have been involved in the construction and development of other similar facilities in the past. Is that accurate?
Yes.
If I asked you to ballpark, and I guess I am, how many of those facilities you've been involved with, what would that number be?
This will now be my third project that I'm involved with.
And with regard to those other projects, what type of security issues or neighborhood encroachment issues have you experienced in those facilities?
I know there was some concerns typically in the beginning, but I think once we were actually able to get in there and show the neighborhood exactly how our service is taken care of and the product that we offer and how secure it is. And, you know, a lot of times we have a reputation of a high traffic type of business, and once they realize that it's really not that kind of business, you know, the self-storage industry as a whole, typically, most people use it as a place to take their belongings and leave them. They don't typically visit them very often, right? So what you tend to find is we're actually a good neighbor in comparison to not only retail, but even sometimes like apartment complexes, because most of those are fairly high traffic as well. So we're actually a pretty good neighbor in the fact that we offer a quiet, typically low impact type of facility that's not going to really change a whole lot that's going on.
And then my final question, with regard to the on-site management presence that was referenced earlier, if I was a neighbor and wanted to contact that individual, how am I going to know who to contact? How do you publicize the identity and contact information for the person who is there on site?
Sure. So we actually, in all of our company-run stores, we actually have what we call a WOW program, where probably at, I don't know, anywhere from a dozen to more points in the facility, the manager of the facility's cell phone is listed. So you can actually call or text the manager's cell phone directly, as well as my cell phone is actually listed on the front door of the building as well. So any customer that's coming or going can have access to both, not only the managers, but my cell phone as well.
Thank you. Any other questions, Mr. Benicki?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Ray, for coming this evening. It was very nice meeting with you the other day. I do have a few other questions. One is, who's going to build this? Is it just you and a couple guys in a truck, or general contractor with local?
Yeah, we try to do local builds as much as possible, right? I mean, it's obviously, we've built locations all across the country, but what we find is if we can find somebody local, it tends to just do better for the project as a whole. So we do have an owner's representative that works for us, but typically as far as the construction, as much as we can, we try to find something local.
Okay. What kind of a time frame, if this is approved in the next few meetings, what kind of a time frame from kind of start to finish? Do you hope to have this up in 12 months, 18 months, 2 years? What time frame?
Typically, a project like this, from my experience, typically takes about 12 to 18 months, depending on exactly what time of year you get started and all that kind of stuff as far as getting all the conceptuals finalized and that kind of thing.
Okay. And then I think, looking at the map here, it looks like there might be one little vacant parcel just to the west.
Correct.
That's not part of this project, if I'm
Correct.
correct. Now, is that little parcel, and you may or may not know this, is that in South Bend or Mishawaka or the county?
Unfortunately, I don't know if that's in South Bend.
In South Bend, okay. So really, this would be the farthest point for Mishawaka on Douglas Road. This is
Correct,
kind
and
of
that's
where
one of
it
the reasons
stops.
why we're obviously annexing in that small 1.5 acre parcel as well.
And I can tell you that I'd much rather have it here in Mishawaka than our neighbors to the west.
So would we.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Benicki. Any other questions, Mr. Violi?
Thank you, Mr. President. We all know there's other U-Haul locations. Are those company-owned, or are they all independent, right? The rent the trucks and the trailers and things like that?
So right now, we currently have 2 company-run locations that are relatively close by. We have one in Elkhart, Indiana, which is a very small facility. And then we also have a very small facility that is off of Western in South Bend as well. Both of those locations obviously are fairly small. They were built many, many years ago and really don't offer our current business model, which is, like I was saying earlier, more tailored to the higher-end storage and things like that. So it's one of the reasons why we've been looking for something nearby to try to obviously build something that can serve the area that offers our current product. And obviously, that's when we came across the property here in Mishawaka.
Most of them are truck sharing, you know, like we were just discussing.
As far as the independent locations?
Correct.
Yes, that's typically what they offer.
And that you're not going to, you know, you're not looking to put them out of business because that's really not your model. what you're
No,
going
no,
after.
actually, if anything, we actually like to partner with them and kind of help them. Again, it's not really about taking business away, it's more about alleviating it and managing it in a better fashion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Carroll?
One other, as far as the storage units on the back, when those are built, I assume that will have a lot of light on it for security.
Oh, yeah.
Are you taking precautions with your lighting so that there's not a lot of light pollution going out in different directions in that area?
Yeah, no, we actually take very careful precautions to make sure no lighting is really looking at any exterior properties. So all lighting that it would be like either pole mounted or anything like that would be facing inside of the storage facility only. And then obviously, typically, there's a buffering zone of some type between our property and somebody else when we do that.
And the color of those buildings, I assume, is going to be reflective enough to project it out, though, and that, I guess being in the backside there, close enough to two-story condo units, again, I'd be really interested to see what kind of screening you guys could come up with to make sure that it's not a blinding light to people in their back windows.
Well, again, I mean, typically, as far as the exterior stuff, most of the lighting is actually relatively close to the ground. Even though it's well lit, it's actually self-contained within the storage units themselves. So
Yeah.
as far as anything exterior-wise, I mean, you don't really get a lot of light outside of the actual storage buildings themselves.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor? If you would, please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Rick Rottweiler. I'm also with U-Haul. I'm a district vice president. I just wanted to answer your question on the screening and the lighting. So with all these, any of the builds that we do, anytime we're abutting any type of residential, generally we're going to screen it with trees. Right now, part of our plan, as you can see, is there's already trees back there. So if it's insufficient in order to screen, then we'll make it sufficient. And then as to Ray's point with the lighting, a lot of those exterior drive-up units you'd see there would be more of like a wall pack lighting instead of a pole-mounted lighting. So when we get to that point, we'd submit photometric plans and have them reviewed and agreed upon prior to any construction. So we're well aware that, you know, light pollution in somebody's home is not a good thing for anybody, so we try to build in respect to that.
Any other questions for the speaker who was just at the podium? I got you up for nothing, sir. Sorry. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor?
I want to just clarify on units quickly. When we built next door, it was almost 400 units on 3 acres. They have 13, almost 14 acres, and all the storage is going to be up in the front. To just give you an idea on the math size, I'm not speaking for them because I have no idea, but you know, that would be a ton of storage over the years. So if you can kind of, and everybody is going inside these days. I give you an idea on how much land, and you'd probably need 2,000 outside storage units. But I'm not speaking for them, but I just want to give you that correlation. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor? Please come forward. Then is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Roycroft, and I'm the owner of a home at 17125 Cherokee Drive. I am a new homeowner. I've been there 1 year. And when I did my due diligence about purchasing my home, obviously I checked to see the zoning because the backyard of my home is 100% adjacent to the property in question here. My home is a mid-century modern home with glass that overlooks the entire area. So anything that happens back there affects me as a homeowner. So I was shocked to receive the notice of this potential change in zoning. It seems rather unusual to have a change in zoning that impacts a property owner in this way. I've also not been privy, other than the first meeting notice, to any of the conversations that were referenced in regard to conversations with homeowners. So I really know very little about what is expected from my end, other than to say that it sounds like a lot of it is hypothetical at this point, that we're saying, well, maybe we'll do this, and maybe we'll expand a little further, but maybe we won't, and we'll try to have lighting that looks like this, and we'll do this, and we'll do that. But once the zoning is changed and the property is sold, those decisions are gone. They're the decisions that we need to make now, how to protect the rights of homeowners as well as give this gentleman his ability to sell his property. So I am concerned that we make a very careful decision about what is best for everyone, and that we have some dialogue between the residents and the business owners so that we are sure of what is expected rather than just saying, well, it might look like that. One of the things that's really important for me to share with you is that I've heard some conversation about progress. That term has been jostled around a bit, and the statements have been made that the residents of Cherokee Drive don't understand what progress is, and that we're trying to impede progress. I believe it's your responsibility to ensure that whatever progress occurs in this community is well thought out and is beneficial for all. So when I look at progress, I'm thinking about affordable housing for this community, not progress that causes my property value to decrease and upsets the current owners of the property around me, because that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at a really bad decision on my part to buy a home, build it up, fix it, make it look nice, tend to my yard, when my property value is going to go significantly in the negative direction. And I know, being a new resident of this community, how hard it is to find affordable housing. So I'm asking you to please think about the families and homeowners that are affected by a decision to possibly tear down every tree in this whole swath, to possibly pave the roads and use that as parking, to possibly put lighting in this area when we don't really know what is expected. And lastly, I just want to say that I really think that there is some collaborative planning that could go into place here so that everyone is content and doesn't feel stepped upon. So I encourage you to find some creative ways that we can make this a win-win rather than simply have the impression that someone's coming in and pushing us out. Because I know you value the people who live in this community. You wouldn't be sitting in the positions that you are if you did not. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? Mr. Benecki?
Thank you. In looking at this property, and you speak of affordable housing and things like that, I mean, in my opinion, there are some things that could be a little bit worse if we were to put in a large apartment community, 1,400 apartments. Then you're going to have more traffic, you're going to have more visitors and lighting. So I don't know that this is the worst thing in the world. And I understand, I apologize that you've only lived there for a year, and obviously somebody who lived there before knew this property was for sale. I don't know if you knew it was or not, but that's one of the things that sometimes they, when somebody's selling a house, they're not going to tell you, hey, I got a problem, and that's not their job. So looking at some of the things that could go wrong, I just don't see this as being one of the worst. And then the other side is, if it were in fact industrial and they put in some type of a factory and you got a stamping machine making noise all night, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that would be bad as well. These are fairly well regulated. There's some other ones close to you that were just put in. The all secure self-storage, they put in a bunch in counties all around us, and they've done a very nice job as well. So while I do sympathize with you, I also look at, what could happen. And like you say, we're just speculating.
Right.
We hope that we can trust them. And in talking to Ray, he seems very, very up and up. I trust what he's telling me.
So I would say to you, I appreciate your giving some comparisons. I trust you all as a body that neither of those worst-case scenarios would occur because you would care about the existing homeowners. And the bottom line for progress for this community, we need to think about what does it look like and what does it feel like? And it isn't just strip shopping centers and all of that sort of thing. I sympathize with anyone who's trying to buy a home here and start a family because it's very, very difficult. I think you should give some consideration to loss of green space in this community because it's trickling away, and once you tear all those trees down, you won't have any. So while you're throwing back other examples of worse case than what it is now, it sounds like you're telling me, well, you're going to have to choose this one because the other two are bad. Well, how about let's work together to figure out a way that we can have this beautiful facility, but also not impact the residents who directly are adjacent to the property in question.
And I agree. I mean, I think with LED lighting can be directed in certain ways. I've seen lighting where it can dim down in certain hours unless there's motion, things like that. So I think there's some things that could be done to help alleviate that.
And I guess I would say back to you, that sounds great, but unless you all mandate it, once the decision is made, who's controlling whether or not that occurs?
That's correct.
Right? So you're trusting someone else. You're moving it out of your responsibility. And right now, I'm speaking all directly to you all who do have that control at the moment, right?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Carroll.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I just want to make sure I understand. When we're looking at the plans, you're not concerned about anything affecting your property, because yours is the one that's the furthest east and in the center, in either Phase 1 or Phase 2, because that's going to be separated by quite a bit of forest. You're concerned about a potential maybe Phase
Correct.
3 in the future?
That, for me personally, yes.
Okay. The other thing, too, I think we all have a love of green space. At this point, though, my understanding is that the owner could take the forest down at any time
Correct.
since they're a private property owner.
Yes.
So I'm not sure that we have the ability to really control a whole lot of that anyway, since that's that piece. But I did want to make sure that as far as your property goes, you're not seeing anything in the current plan that would affect you really in any way.
It could potentially affect other homeowners in my area, including the condominium complex, which is a little bit further down from me.
Sure, that's the one we talked about. The only one I can see is the neighbor on the corner there, and it looks like they do have a significant amount of buffer of forest. But I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't anything I was missing, that there is an
Again, I
actual
don't know,
plan.
because I haven't seen what any of this is going to look like, but, I know that it's not my property. It's someone else's property, and they can develop it any way they want to, but I'm speaking here tonight to you all who have a decision to make about a proposal, and just making sure that we're controlling the decision-making that the purchaser has with regard to some of the aspects of this project.
But that's what I'm saying. As far as the aspects of the project, though, there's nothing you've identified to this point as part of the project that affects your property?
I don't know, because I haven't seen the whole layout. I've just heard him talk about, well, maybe we could go down there. I don't know if it's going to turn into like extra truck parking, or they're going to pave it, or they're going to keep it as green space, but I am concerned.
At this point, they've indicated they're going to keep it as green space, from what I've heard, and that there are currently nothing in the plans for that, is all I just wanted to make sure I was clear that I wasn't missing anything. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Mr. Maramolante.
Thank you. If I could just piggyback on Mr. Carroll's, if you had a blank canvas and you could put in your requirements in a dream world, what would you want to see on that back portion?
I've
it
thought
were to
about
be
this a
developed.
lot, because you could do walking trails back. There are a lot of things that you could do that would appreciate the green space and appreciate something for the community itself. But once you clog that lane up, you can't do anything back there.
I'm sorry, I was speaking more specifically, if this were to get approved, they were to develop, if it were to move forward into Phase 2, Phase 3, closer to your property, what would give you more peace of mind if that were to be moved into second phase?
So
second, third phases?
yes, I'm concerned about the lighting, I'm concerned about the noise, I'm concerned about the people that are coming back there and who they are. I'm concerned about what level of fencing I'm going to be required to put up in order to protect myself from that, which changes the whole dynamic of my property value and, how much noise is back there and that sort of thing. So my number one concern is that I'm devaluing that this will devalue my property.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition, if you would, please come forward and begin by stating your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name's Allison Kincaid. I live at 17130 Cherokee Drive. Is this close enough?
Yes.
Okay. I've been a resident for almost 4 years at the Cherokee neighborhood that is directly west of 1693 Douglas Road and the adjacent vacant property that this proposal refers to. I fell in love with the location of the house as soon as I viewed it. It's conveniently close to South Bend, Granger, and Mishawaka. We have the toll road just north of us, US 23 just west, and the heavily trafficked street of Douglas just south of us, which sounds like the neighborhood should be a noisy and busy nightmare. But what sold it for me are the woods that surround our street that create a woodland paradise for all the families that live there. I don't feel as if I'm right in the middle of 3 cities. I feel enclosed, safe, and at peace in my neighborhood. Eliminating over half of that forest that surrounds our home will not only obliterate our sanctuary, but also trigger numerous adverse consequences. For starters, there will be an increase to noise, light, and air pollution, a terrifying threat to the safety of all Cherokee Drive residents and surrounding businesses, a decrease to property values, and the tearing down and killing of protected species that call those woodlands their home. Don't worry, Mr. Emmons. The rest of my speech is not going to be the same as the Planning Committee. First, though, I would like to address what Mr. Piericini had stated about the Douglas Commons easement. Since they were not here, I did not see anyone here to speak for them. In the Planning Committee, they had stated that the easement did little to provide any sort of barrier to the rest of the property west of the easement. I'd also like to point out that I don't see my address as county. I'm not some county bumpkin, as Mr. Piericini seemed to try to imply. I am the meeting point between South Bend, Granger, and Mishawaka. I consider myself a citizen of all 3 cities and therefore will advocate for all citizens from each city. Now, back at the planning meeting, there were several objections to the petition, and the rebuttal of the petitioner did little to calm the masses. Yes, Mishawaka has ordinances on light, but from seeing other U-Haul storage facilities, they are aggressively lit to shine on everything around them.
And if I can interrupt for a moment?
Yeah.
I certainly don't want to stifle your creativity and what you want to share with us, but I will state for the record that every council member has access to the recording of the Plan Commission meeting and what transpired there. And we've also been provided with a summary by the Planning Department of the written comments that were made at the meeting, and then any documents that were submitted after that fact. So just so you know, we are already in possession of that, so I'm going to ask you not to go replow ground that we've already been over, or the information that
I
we already have access
appreciate
to.
that. I'm actually going to be talking on points that the rebuttal either ignored or we were not allowed to actually bring our own rebuttal as opposition because
Please
of the
continue,
nature of the
then.
meeting. So I appreciate that. Thank you. As far as the lights of other U-Hauls, I do have an image here from another U-Haul taken down in Kentucky. Unfortunately, I only have 1 copy, but if you guys want to send it around. As I said, they are aggressively lit to shine on everything around them, and I have yet to see those light regulations enforced. Another issue brought up that was ignored during the rebuttal was that of noise pollution. Those woods are a sound barrier between us and all the city noise. Allowing this land to be rezoned and used as commercial industrial will increase the noise level to residents all around. And I will say that the Phase 2, which was not at the planning committee, destroys a lot of the woods to my neighbor's side and is actually very close to my property as well. So that will directly affect my neighbor and myself for Phase 2. In addition, in August 2023, the EPA released that noise, air, and light pollution adversely affects the lives of millions. There are studies, and many of that I have found show there's a direct link between noise, light, and health. There's a lot of health issues that come from this: heart disease, depression, stress-related illnesses, hearing loss, lost productivity, and many more. U-Haul cannot prevent the noise and air pollution it will create, and whatever man-made solutions they think they can build to reduce noise will not be as majestic or efficient as nature's forest. Why are we harping on the woods when the plan only shows a minimal amount of the woods being removed from U-Haul building? Well, that was another point made in the rebuttal, was that U-Haul currently does not have plans to eliminate the woods. While this may seem reassuring, this is coming from big companies who do not have any trustworthy standing with the residents around the property or the community, as we were not even included in discussions about this property. I am glad that Douglas Commons was included, but Cherokee and other people who spoke in opposition at the planning meeting were not involved as well. We have no concrete reassurance that the woods and therefore a peaceful habitat will remain intact once U-Haul is allowed to move in. To allow such a thing to happen, we would need it in written contract that a majority percentage, say 99% of the woods, will not be eliminated. And for that, every tree already taken down and that will be taken down, another tree needs to be replanted elsewhere. As Ann pointed out, we are losing our green space. For the petitioner also did not touch on the fact that ridding the community of these woods will lead to significantly more air pollution. Another point they missed were the endangered species that they will be uprooting. Yes, there are many creatures that live in the woods that are considered pests by some, including me. I could do without the coyotes, the groundhogs, and the deer, honestly. But there are many species that are endangered that call the woods home, including species of plants that can't just get up and move, as suggested during the planning committee. If destroying those endangered plants isn't a felony, then I quote from Indiana state law, damage to the environment that causes damage to an endangered and at-risk or a threatened species commits a felony. There are several species that live in the woods that are endangered or protected. The plant species Trillium, woodpeckers, our nocturnal bat friends, owls, many species of reptiles, bluebirds, and many more, all of which will suffer damage from the destruction of those woods. Not only did the petitioner and the most of the planning committee seem to not realize that the lives of the people living around those woods would be affected, they also seemed to not realize that the protected wildlife would be dangerously affected as well. On top of that, they did not address the danger that coyotes pose to the families and children along US 23 and the KinderCare daycare center at the end of the woods. Knocking down the woods would leave the coyotes no other choice but to make their dens behind the daycare and closer to homes with family. This is even knocking down the part of phase 2. 2 years ago, they built oral surgery Michiana. They didn't touch the woods at all when they were building that, and that's directly behind my house on Douglas. And that's when the coyotes showed up behind my neighbors and mine house. Which is a threat to my dogs, which also went and has killed livestock along neighbors along that property line, actually further north.
And ma'am, if I can interrupt again for another moment, I'm sorry. I appreciate your passion and the points that you're making, but at this point in time, it feels to me like we're becoming a little bit repetitive. So if you could move on to any other points that you wanted to make real briefly and sum up, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, that was another point that wasn't even addressed by the proposal,
Very
by the
briefly, if you
petitioner.
can summarize.
I'll continue on, thank you. As I previously said, I would love to do without the coyotes, but I have been living with them for over 2 years.
And ma'am, once again, I'm going to ask you to move on from this point because I feel that we are becoming repetitive at this point in time. There are obviously some other people who want to speak, and we have other business to transact this evening. So, for the second time, I'm going to ask you to move on to your next point and be as succinct as you possibly can be.
I'll do my best, thank you. As Mr. Emmons' question asked me of during the planning committee, have we as neighbors made moves to buy the land ourselves to keep it as nature intended, make it into a conservation or something of the like? Well, for one, Mr. Piericini did not approach us about purchasing the land. And for two, I don't think Mr. Emmons understands that the average citizen that lives in his city and surrounding areas. I myself have been a critical care nurse for 11 years, working overtime to buy my own house, my 2 dogs, and to afford to start my master's in nursing to become a family nurse practitioner. The fact that Mr. Emmons even asked the citizens this
Ma'am, I'm
question
going to
is...
interrupt you again. Any comments directed at a specific council member in that fashion are inappropriate under our council rules.
Okay,
So I'm
I
going to ask you to
apologize.
stick to the issues
Yeah.
and not direct any comments toward Mr. Emmons.
I apologize.
Thank you. Please proceed.
But it's also going back to affordable housing that we're just trying to make ends meet. If I had won the lottery, I would buy all of the natural habitat that I can. Something else that Ann also so eloquently pointed on was that the phrase storage units are progress has been thrown around willy-nilly. Storage units are not progress. All storage units mean is that there are people holding on to too many things. Storage units are a symptom of the problem of maximalism. And in the area U-Haul has chosen, it is the opposite of progress. Progress is people and residents being able to live their best quality of life without being without having any, to live their best quality of life without, I can't think of the word. To live their best quality of life. There are medical businesses, lawyers, and residential areas in that community. It is not a residential area. That area is residential, medical, there's lawyers. It's not anything. There are people that live there. It's not warehouses and big industry. But, sorry, I digress. 2 more further points I have. 1, there are 4 storage units within a mile radius of that location, with a 5th one being built on US 23 in Cleveland. The area is becoming oversaturated with storage units. Soon, the current thriving medical and residential district will become nothing but a warehouse district feeding Notre Dame the goods they desire. For that sounds like that's why you've chosen that location, is it not? To attempt to cater Notre Dame students down the road. It is about the money. Allowing this land to be annexed and rezoned to commercial industrial is not the best use of land by any means. Also, I'm not an expert. We already addressed that. It will lower property values. However, since I want the woods to remain intact around my peaceful paradise, I did want to help U-Haul find a more appropriate location for their storage facility. Driving from South Bend to Mishawaka, from south of Mishawaka to north, just on Main Street, there are 3 vacant lots for sale. There's a 4th lot for sale on Main Street with a very rundown building that used to be USA Skate. That's definitely a property that U-Haul could come in and make more beautiful. It's just south of Ritter's. These addresses, 3 around Main Street and Edison Lakes and 1 at 3909 Main Street, are great locations for storage units. If U-Haul wishes to stay with Coldwell Bank Properties, just down the way in South Bend on Cleveland, the Clay Church Firehouse campus lot is for sale and the price has recently been reduced. There are many more options for storage units elsewhere and in more appropriate locations. Something else that's also been brought up is if we're aware that Mr. Piericini can destroy the woods at any time he pleases. We are indeed aware of this. He has owned the land for 30 years and has yet to do this. Also, even if it's his property, destroy the woods is still a felony. So for leaving the woods intact so far, our community has been grateful. Now, if Mr. Piericini or U-Haul wants to have actual discussions about the fate of the woods, Cherokee Drive would love to sit down and figure out a best solution.
And at this point, ma'am, once again, I'm going to ask you to sum up because it appears to me that we have been over the issue of the woods a couple times in your presentation. So if you have any final comments that you'd like to make, but I'm going to ask you to sum up, please.
I think Ann said it best, where this is a meeting where it needs to be set in stone, like these amount of woods will not be taken down and not be touched, and that these will be the actual solutions to the noise, the light, and the air pollution as well. Because as Ann was saying, after it goes from you guys, it's out of everyone's control.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the council? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? If you would, please come forward. And at this point, I'll interject. We legitimately want to hear from all of you, and we appreciate the passion that you bring to the podium, but we do ask that you touch on only points that have not been made by a prior speaker and not reiterate. And I do reserve the right to ask people to sum up if they become repetitive or their comments are less than germane. So with that, ma'am, if you would begin with your name and address for the record,
Yes,
please.
my name is Darylyn Tingle. I live at 17160 Cherokee Drive with my sister and my brother. The first thing I want to state is that I received a letter from our state representative, Ryan Dvorak, and his legislative assistant sent you all a copy of it. Did you receive it?
We have, the record will reflect that we've received the letter.
Okay.
Thank you.
I would like for it, can it be read into the record?
Ma'am, unfortunately, our rules don't allow for that, so the record will reflect that we've received that record and that council members have that information at their disposal.
Okay. Well, I'll have to kind of skim through this because I want to be respectful of your wishes.
Understood.
I just want to point out in his letter that I didn't know, but he called this, now, in the petition board meeting that was in here a few weeks ago, it was kind of, everyone was being kind of vague about what it would require, the zoning requirements would be to have storage units in this property. And my understanding is that it would have to be rezoned to industrial commercial. Is that correct?
And it's going to sound like I'm avoiding your question, and I promise you I am not. This is designed, this public hearing component is designed for comments by people such as yourself. It is not a question and answer session where you pose questions
Okay,
to
well,
council.
then I'll just-
But I will pledge to you this. As soon as you conclude, and when I have a chance as we wrap up to speak myself, I will ask our legal counsel to address
Okay, good.
that issue for you.
Okay, good, because what Mr. Dvorak said is that, you know, he called it spot zoning, where you change the zoning.
And again, ma'am, I'm going to remind you that we all have that letter, so I'm going to ask
Okay,
you not to
but
repeat to us what we already have in
There's
front
here
of
who
us.
did not know that. So anyway, I will say this. I know this hasn't been said. Personally, what most greatly concerns me is the idea that some actually believe that tax revenue is more important than the health and welfare of the people they represent, or worse, that the prosperity of some takes such precedence that others become expendable. After all, and I quote, "That whole area over there is going commercial anyway, and that's progress."
Thank you. Any questions from the council? Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? If you would, please come forward. Sorry, sir, I almost jumped the gun on you, and please come forward.
Kurt Urbanski, 5625 Irish Way, apartment 10. I'm the treasurer of North Douglas Condominium Association, neighboring this development. And I will say I'm thankful that Mr. Piericini and the U-Haul folks were able to meet with the condo owners the other day to discuss the plan in more detail. And I appreciate that, and I'm happy that they took the time to meet with us. And I did reach out and send some comments to the council, which I believe you guys have already received. So I'll skim over this and try to avoid anything that's already been discussed. I guess a couple concerns specific to the condominium complex is the proposed entrance on the corner there in the southeast corner, right across from the existing entrance to the storage units, kind of creating like a four-way intersection right there. Just concerned about potential increase in traffic there, and I'm sure if this is approved, it'll have to go through the highway department and other departments too to just figure out if that is going to be okay there, or if anything needs to be revised. In the proposal, there was a statement that said that customers and community residents who wish to use the on-site dumpsters for disposing of refuse may gain permission to do so and are assessed an additional fee. And I guess a concern for North Douglas is that people who come to dump their stuff in the storage units, that maybe there's extra stuff that doesn't fit, or maybe they're clearing stuff out and they don't want it anymore. If they don't want to pay the fee to U-Haul, you know, we're a neighboring community that's private property. It's not on city trash pickup. We have a dumpster there that we have to pay for. And we've already had some problems. I don't know if it's people within the community or people from the storage units just dumping furniture, bed frames, mattresses, old furniture and stuff out there by the dumpster that then doesn't even fit in the dumpster, and we have to pay extra to remove it. So I guess there's a concern that if people are gonna not wanna pay the fee to U-Haul to dispose of that stuff, that, hey, maybe they'll just come dump their stuff in our dumpster and let it sit there, or dump it on the vacant land there. So that was a concern. So very important to the longevity of North Douglas condos is we were a development that was originally planned to have 216 units there. And unfortunately, the developer, Cleveland, went bankrupt back in 2007 or 8 and didn't finish it. So only 32 units have been built so far. And it really makes it difficult to spread the common expenses of trash pickup, water, electric, insurance, landscaping, et cetera, over 32 units. And so recently, within the last year, the condo association settled litigation with another party to establish the title to some of the vacant land to the north of our condominiums. And the plan is to work with a developer to 2 units. And so that would really give us the opportunity to have a developer come in, contribute to the reserve fund, pave the road, because the road was never finished after the development was started. They were going to be driving big, heavy trucks in and out of there, and so it's just a base layer of asphalt. And currently, there's no way that we can afford to pave that. We got a quote for over $100,000 to do that. And so, you know, that's one concern. The roofs are a concern, and we're operating on a pretty thin budget, only having 32 units. And so the concern for the longevity of the community is that, you know, is a developer really going to want to come in here and add on to the condominium complex if they're going to be storage units either right behind us or, you know, on the corner there? So I don't know, obviously, but that is a concern of what that would look like, and would a developer be willing to come in and finish it with storage units possibly right behind it if they go through with phase 2. I will apologize. I thought this meeting was at 7, so I missed the presentation that you all gave here. I was hoping to hear him speak here. What else did I have here? So I think some folks have already touched on the lighting, so I won't touch on that too much. But my condo is on the back side of the 5625 building, and so directly overlooking the woods there. And, you know, with the easement, there'll be a little bit of a buffer, but I'm on the 2nd floor, and if they're going to have storage units back there possibly as part of Phase 2, I think the provisions within the proposal stated the lights could be up to 25 feet tall, and I don't think that's going to be shielded by the trees that they would have to put up, or a fence that they would have to put up. I think that's going to be high. I wasn't able to get any strong confirmation. I know the lights from the existing storage facility were built probably 20-ish years ago at least, so I don't know if regulations have changed since then, or if there's new ways to install lighting, but I can tell you that from my one window that is facing that direction, that's not directly into my living room, I can still see the lights at night from the opposite side storage units. So I can only imagine it would be brighter if there's nothing to direct the light downwards, or keep it from shining right in the living room window. But I will say I'm also not opposed to developing the vacant area right off of Douglas on the corner and in the area where they're proposing the 3-story building. I don't know that what they're proposing is the best possible thing that could go there, but I would really like to see the house and property gone. I think it's a little bit of an eyesore. And historically, there's been trash buildup along the edge of Shawn Drive there. They've done a better job recently of maintaining that, but going back a couple of years, there's a car bumper that had been sitting there for a long time, and just trash from the gas station blowing over, and the house there, the shed next to it is kind of run down, and I would really like to see something go in there, and I'm looking forward to having a sidewalk or bike path along there, because it gives the residents of North Douglas the opportunity to pretty much connect from our development all the way down to the new bike trail that goes along the north side of Douglas that's been extended out to State Road 23. So that would provide easy access if we had a bike trail right there. So I do want to see something go in there. I don't know if this is the best thing that could, but I think I'm more concerned about Phase 2 than what they're proposing in Phase 1. And I guess one last clarification, I don't know if U-Haul or Mr. Piericini can answer this, because I missed the beginning of the presentation, but where they're proposing building the extra building right on the corner there, is that part of Phase 1, or is that a third phase?
And sir, I'm going to ask you to have that conversation with the representatives of U-Haul, Mr. Piericini, after you conclude your remarks, or perhaps after the meeting, since we've already been over that ground.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
That's all I got.
Are there any questions for this gentleman? Thank you, sir, and I feel duty-bound to tell you that I'm betting on UConn tonight, so go Huskies.
It's going to be a tough game.
Yeah, it should be a good game. Two best teams. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? If so, please come forward. Then is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in opposition? Are there any council members who wish to speak? I will just note for the record, before we close this public hearing, several points were made, and I appreciate the passion and the information that was shared with us. Several questions were asked rhetorically, several points were made that I believe that are answered by the staff report and the proposed ordinance that's in our council packet. I'll give you the example of lighting. We not only have ordinances that in general cover all types of development and lighting, but there are specific conditions of approval that, if this is passed, would touch on lighting issues. So I would certainly invite everybody to visit the city website, where the packet that we have in front of us is contained electronically as well, and you'll see some of those conditions, and hopefully they'll answer some of the questions that you may have. But with that, if there are no additional questions or comments from the council, I will close the public. Mr. President? There's no right of rebuttal, Mr. Piercini. So at this point in time, I'm going to close the public hearing on this matter. Pursuant to state law, this matter will be voted on at our next council meeting on April 22nd. Thank you.
Proposed ordinance number 2024-06, an ordinance annexing contiguous territory to the city of Mishawaka, Indiana, and providing zoning classification therefore. This is to annex 30.64 acres and establishing zoning as S2 PUD, northwest corner of Capitol Avenue and Cleveland Road. Public hearing, no vote.
Thank you. We will now move into the public hearing of proposed ordinance 2024-06. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, if you would, please come forward and begin by stating your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Angela Smith with Dan Charner Associates, offices located at 1643 Commerce Drive. As we all know, you guys have the packet of information in front of you, so I'll go over this briefly and then be available to answer questions. So the request shows a rezoning and annexation of 30 acres. The parcel itself is just over 21 acres. That additional acreage is because per state law, we have to take in the adjacent right-of-ways. So by the time you add in Capitol, Toll Road, Cleveland, it makes it much bigger. But it's in fact essentially a 21-acre parcel that's an extension of the PUD that was approved by this council to the west of this site. So at the time the previous PUD came through, they were discussing purchasing this to help round out the campus that they're looking for here, which is essentially an auto mall. So it would have services for auto sales and related services. All the uses that were in the original PUD and all of the restrictions would extend to this, with the exception of one thing. The current PUD in front of you this evening includes R1 because there's a life estate on the property. So the gentleman will continue to be able to live in the property, so that use is added to allow him to continue to live there. The restrictions about no fueling station, no billboards, and the other development standards that were adopted with the previous PUD would extend to this as well. We're continuing to work with some adjacent property owners because we all know we have to get water and sewer to the site, which is not there yet. It's quite a ways south of us. And so they continue to work with the property owners to try to work on that. That would not require an annexation, but it may require additional zoning work in the future depending on how all of that pans out. I'd be happy to answer any questions about the development or your concerns this evening.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? And thank you for the information. You and I had a chance to speak late last week. And before I get into the topic that we discussed, there is, as you're aware, a series of conditions that are built into not only the staff report, but the proposed ordinance that we'll be asked to approve. Do you have the authority to commit on behalf of your client that you are in agreement with those conditions as proposed by staff?
Yes, we have forwarded those to the client. They reviewed them and they understand that those are all conditions upon development.
Okay. Then going back to the issue that you and I discussed, as reflected in the staff report, no specific users, and I quote, or contingent purchaser have been identified. And at times there are good reasons for the underlying landowner or the end user's identity to remain anonymous. Although I think as a general matter, it's good government for the specifics to be known, and it helps us to decide whether in fact this is a development that is in the best interest of the community. So at this point in time, are you at liberty to share any additional information with regard to the identity of the end user here?
So we, out of preservation of a relationship with our client, we are not supposed to disclose, but I could answer any questions related to that.
Well, I don't profess to be the world's greatest detective, but through a literally 5-second Google search, using the name of the individual who signed the petition as well as the address on the document that authorized you to represent the individual, it appeared to me that the underlying land user here is Gurley Leap. Are you aware of any facts that would lead me to believe that I'm wrong with regard to the identity of that underlying end user?
I do not know of anything. In fact, the email address for the individual I have also has Gurley Leap in the name.
Okay. I will state, just from my standpoint, The beauty of the fact that we're not going to be casting a vote this evening is that it's going to allow me to have some time to ponder the fact that there isn't the transparency here. And absent a persuasive explanation as to why the identity is not being made public, I reserve the right to vote no based only on that ground itself. But I'll be happy in between now and the time of the vote to receive any additional information that you want to provide to us that would help shed light on that issue.
Sure. So as I mentioned, we are still under negotiations and investigation of how to get the water and sewer up to the site, which, as you mentioned, somebody could look up the information and probably find at this point. When they were under phase one, they were a contingent purchaser. This property, they've actually closed on the purchaser. So again, if you look up the name of the company, I don't know under state law if we're required to reveal, or under your practices, reveal the specific company going to a property. That's new to me. Generally, we look at the use and the users. It is, in fact, an auto dealership. I think from our conversation, you can probably figure out who it is. It is, in fact, I'll just say it, it is Gurley Leap. You've heard the name. I've said the email address. It is Gurley Leap. They have, up to this point, kept that more on the quiet side, not out of a lack of transparency, but because the plans aren't fully developed and their acquisitions aren't fully finished. So.
I appreciate that clarification. And again, this is the reason why I called you on Friday. If there was a reason not to disclose it, I would have hoped that you would have reached out to me again today and disclosed that. And that's the only reason why I'm asking those questions this evening. But I appreciate the clarification tonight. Thank you. Any additional questions from the council? Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance? If you would, please come forward to the podium. And is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance? Is there anyone present with us this evening who wishes to speak in opposition? Please come forward. And is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in opposition? Are there any council members who wish to speak? Hearing none, then at this time, we will close the public hearing on proposed ordinance 2024-06. And once again, pursuant to state law, we will cast a vote on this matter at our next regularly scheduled council meeting of April 22nd of this year. Thank you.
Proposed ordinance number 2024-07, an ordinance annexing contiguous territory to the city of Mishawaka, Indiana, and providing zoning classification therefore. This is to annex and zone to S2 PUD for residential subdivision, southeast corner of Bremen Highway and Dragoon Trail. Public hearing, no vote.
Thank you. With that, we'll move into public hearing on proposed ordinance 2024-07. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, if you would, please come forward to the podium and begin by stating your name and address for the record.
Good evening. Daryl Knipp with Abba Marsh Consultants at 315 West Jefferson Boulevard in South Bend. I'm here tonight representing the developer and applicant, Bill Loudon and his development company, requesting your approval to annex and zone with S2 PUD approximately 18 acres on the southeast corner of Bremen Highway and Dragoon Trail into the city with a PUD zoning that would allow for single-family residential development. The PUD would allow for a combination of single-family detached homes, attached single-family homes, and possibly attached townhomes, all owner-occupied homes, with a maximum of 30% of these homes being attached or townhomes. Home prices are estimated to be approximately $500,000. We have met with city planning and engineering staff to discuss the access, drainage, land use, and the future road widening of Bremen Highway and the effects on this site. At the Plan Commission meeting, we heard from a few neighbors regarding safety concerns over any entrance from Bremen Highway. We want to reiterate that we are not proposing any entrance off Bremen Highway. The entrance would be off of Dragoon based on site distance and slopes, and we feel the safest location is the east end of this site on Dragoon. This would, of course, require a deceleration lane and some work on the roadway. The developer has agreed to work with the city and the county to provide additional right-of-way for future Bremen Highway Road widening, and we respectfully request your approval of this annexation and PUD.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Knipp? Mr. Emmons?
Thank you. Mr. Knipp, you mentioned that the entry and exit would be off of Dragoon Trail to this development. Is that correct?
That is correct.
But there is a roadway up there called Princess Drive, and it goes up to basically to one house. And in my understanding, that house is going to be preserved.
That is correct. The house would be reserved, but it would be accessed, it would have access from the new internal roads. So that existing Princess Drive would go away.
Okay, so you'll close that off so that home would have another driveway to get out.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Carroll?
Thank you, Mr. President. Question just kind of to reiterate here on the record. The concerns that I've heard mainly have been ones of congestion and traffic issues and increased pressure on residential roadways to get through. Just curious about your comments on that and if there were any traffic studies that were done.
No formal traffic studies, but a look at the trip generation anticipated for this development. It would add about 2 to 3% to the traffic counts on Dragoon, and about 1% to the traffic counts on Bremen Highway.
One of the major ones that was concerned is that people are going to use Merrifield as a cut through to get to that as opposed to going on one of the major roads. So that's something to keep in mind. But that was the main piece of concern that I had heard.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Knipp? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And I'm avoiding the temptation to bring up Purdue once again, Darrell. So, is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance? If you would, please come forward. Then, is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor? Is there anyone here this evening who wishes to speak in opposition? Please come forward. And is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in opposition? Are there any council members who wish to speak? Hearing none, then we will close the public hearing on proposed ordinance 2024-07. And once again, pursuant to Indiana law, we will vote on this proposed ordinance at our next regularly scheduled council meeting on April 22nd of this year. Thank you. And with that, we will move into privilege of the floor. At this time, members of the public are invited to the podium to speak with respect to non-agenda items only under privilege of the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, council members. Dave Wood, Mayor, here to remind you that Thursday is my annual State of the City right here in council chambers. So be prepared to come and stay late and learn about your hometown and a lot of the issues that we're facing and the progress that we're seeing. So we will see you Thursday, 6 o'clock, open to the public, right here in council chambers, City Hall. Thank you.
We look forward to it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Anyone else wishing to speak under privilege of the floor? And is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak under privilege of the floor? Thank you. With that, we'll move into unfinished business, of which there is none. New business. Is there any new business to come before the council? Mr. Emmons.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. President. Just a reminder that the West End Neighborhood Meeting is on the 18th. And if you missed the State of the City that is given by the mayor this coming Thursday, you'll have the opportunity to hear a shortened version of the State of the City at the 18th meeting of the West End Neighborhood Group. So look forward to seeing you. It's Thursday and also the following Thursday. And at my meeting, we'll have refreshments from the West End Bakery. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Emmons. Mr. Mamalante.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a brief reminder that the Twin Branch Neighborhood Watch meeting will be April 17th. The location has not been determined yet, but it will take place at 7 o'clock. Our guest speaker will be Chris Jamrose from our engineering department. She'll be speaking of some current and future developments and changes to that area, the Twin Branch. the neighbors had some concerns, so she's going to be there to address any questions or concerns from that area. All are welcome. It is April 17th at 7 o'clock, and once I figure out if it will be at City Hall or the Fire Station number 4, I will let everyone know.
Thank you. Other new business to come before the council? Then hearing none, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Approved it. Yes, the rest okay, is that fine here? Thank you.
I'll have her send it to
You think it was the QR code cost that?
The drain goes up, so the drain up from the drain, and then just kind of sits there. And then when I'm looking down at the drain, there's no.
That's what I'm saying. Read that.
Or anything that comes from that side. There's one that goes
I
down.
just, you know,
I just don't know if there's a mechanism that.
these people have
Unless they
just
were trying to make
such
some kind of swale. And if that's all swale, they can.
That was his legal, I hope that was his legislative.
Huh?
I appreciate it because it just caused the damage. And I'm afraid that if
Very good.
and if they're not able to remedy it,
Only because it's that government act.
When you see the police chief, you know what? Do something, let me know the seconds on
We get a lot to sign on this one.
weekend. Guys doing deals down Main Street for like a mile. And then it shows 2 minutes later, they're coming down Great Road. There's one of them. I hope he got out to it. And then today, so I got Main Street, and these guys, no license plates on their
Look at them, didn't get dark. Yeah.
How's it going? Slow these kids down. Kill somebody else. Somebody else. Yeah, and the problem is,
And it,
you see the
God, don't, jeez.
Your women's Democratic lilies?
Yeah. Tulips.
somebody else's fault because they got killed.
When did you, I didn't see you.
Hey, how are you, man?
Oh, did you? Did you, were you?